I spent all of it. My first company I made went bankrupt. We lost all that.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Femi Daniel Show. On today's episode, it's pretty cool because I have one of my friends, a ninja closer, as you can see on his shirt. It's one of my very good friends out in Arizona, actually, and he's in the real estate industry like I am. But I wanted to bring him on this podcast so that he can have a little bit of conversation with you guys and kind of give you guys tips and strategies to really getting started. Because a lot of you really think that I started just with like a shitload of money and everything. But if there's one person that can give you strategies on how you can get started in real estate without really having that much money or that much knowledge off the rip, I think Munif will be a great person. So without further ado, I'll let you come in, man, and just, introduce yourself, tell people a little bit about you. Just some little backstory so really understand who we're talking to.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction, Femi. It's really an honor to be on your podcast, man. I've heard a lot about it. I follow you on social. I'm a big fan of all the stuff you're putting out there on social media. You're helping a lot of people. Definitely helping a lot of people. So a little bit about myself. My name is Munif Saza. I got started into real estate a few years ago. I joined a lot of mentorship programs in real estate. I spent a lot of money to the point where I was taking out a second mortgage on my personal residence, my primary residence. I took out a second mortgage just to pay for these mentorships. And I made no money from them. And then I joined the mentorship that we're both in right now, Sub 2. I work at. I'm a big proponent of Pace and the Sub 2 community. And that's where things started clicking for me, because that's where I was able to build my network out and learn the strategy of using other people's money to do my deals. So I remember joining the community. They charge membership fee, a one-time lifetime fee. You get in, and I was like, you know what, this is it. Like, if this doesn't make me money, I'm gonna give up. Like, I've done it all. I've been doing this, and I can't figure this out. And if I don't really figure it out now, I'm done. And I'm not spending any more money, because the previous programs had me, buy virtual assistants to call for me, had me pull lists. I spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars pulling lists, spending on virtual assistants. It was a lot. And
if you could sorry to cut you off, but if you could estimate how much you had spent up until joining Sub 2 prior, just to give people like a understanding of how willing you were to go really like actually learn this stuff, how much would you say you had spent?
I spent above $50,000.
Man,
I spent, maybe 30,000 went for membership fees, programs, 3-day events to learn, I plane tickets, hotels, that kind of stuff. Maybe $30,000 on that, and then another $20,000 on marketing. I would spend. One program was like, hey, you got to spend $5,000 on direct mail. So you find a market and you send the mailers. So I did that, and I didn't know what to do when they called me. When someone said, hey, I want to sell you my house, I didn't know what to do, because they never taught me that. So
right.
I would have a script. I'd read the script, but what if the customer would go off script? I wouldn't know what to do. They're supposed to stick to the script that I have in front of me.
That's not your response.
So I didn't give up, though. I joined Sub 2. I had a family member who was in it, who was in the mentorship. He was like, dude, like, if you're going to do anything, you should join Pace Morby's group. So I joined the group. And wow, what do I say? They were like, they had role-playing sessions, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I was like, let me go into this and actually learn how to communicate effectively. And I would just role play. Just and the people you're role-playing with, we're not using scripts. We're just conversation. And it's like, they would ask me a question like, hey, like, what's the name of your company? Where are you based out of? how many years have you been doing this? What do you do with that property? How are you going to pay it on all cash? They would ask me questions that they would stump me, and I'd have to go figure out an appropriate answer.
Right.
I didn't have a website, have any of that, and I'd just say the answer I would say, I learned to say this would be, I don't have a website. I don't want to spend time building and developing a website because I'm not some big company. I'm a private investor. I'm a private investor. I can get you a better deals than some of these bigger companies. And if you want a big, company like Open Door or Redfin to come buy your house, sure, they'll buy it, but they're not going to pay as much as I do. And
I think that alone really puts me into perspective on how you stand out in your, and how you became such a great closer. I think the way you mix in, just the honesty of the situation, to the sellers, I think it's a very different approach, because a lot of like you said, a lot of mentorships and a lot of just people in general, they teach you to like just sell yourself as this big company. Oh, my partner is this and that. But every time I've listened to like your closings or whatever, it's so personable that I feel like the sellers almost immediately within minutes start to feel like they're your friend. And it's like, okay, how can we solve this situation and buy a house? Do you feel like this is something that's always been in you? Like, to like kind of be able to connect with people on a personal one-to-one level? Or is this something that you also learned within the sub-2 community? And how do you feel like it helps you stand out?
That's a really good question. So the sub-2 community gave me a platform to practice. It was zero pressure. It was a platform where I could role play with, I probably role played thousands of calls with hundreds of people this past 12 months. And it gave me a platform to communicate and role play. Now, the question you asked before that was it in me to communicate the way I do? And the answer is yes. I never liked reading scripts, and I never liked lying or misleading about what I can do. I never liked saying, I've been doing this for 10 years. I don't like saying that, even if it's in a script, or my company's been doing this for 10 years, or my partner is blah, 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 or making myself seem a lot bigger than I am. What I learned to say is, if somebody's like, how long have you been doing this? I learned to say, oh, I've been doing this long enough, if you know what I mean.
So don't worry about it. Just enough.
Long enough, you know what I mean. And then I just start laughing. And they laugh, and then change the subject. And that seemed more congruent to my personality, and it felt more honest, and it just made it so. One of my worst fears was like, man, what if I lie about something and somebody catches me on it? I will lose so much credibility with them, but then I'll lose it with myself, because I will not be confident in the next call. I'll be like, who else is out there like digging into? So I'm like, let me just speak the truth, and so no one can ever challenge me. No one can ever say, hey, you misled me. You said this, but I found out this later, and that has served me well. Because if somebody looks me up and they're like, hey, you own this company that isn't even registered to do business in the state, I can say, yeah, I told you I'm not local. You already know I'm not local. That's true. Yeah, that's true. Right? I never say, hey, I drove by your house, or I buy properties in this area. I never say that, because it's not true unless I did buy a property in that
area. Right. Wow, that's a completely different approach immediately just off the bat. And I really appreciate you for sharing that. And for people listening, that just shows like, your communication style plays a very big role. And also just keeping the integrity of the whole situation. Because like Munif just rightly said, what if the person actually does do their due diligence on you and catches you in all this is lies? So now you're basically going to have to start all over again, building that trust and that rapport with them, and then having to explain yourself. But most importantly, like you mentioned, you lose credibility in yourself. You start to feel like, am I trustworthy? Am I really qualified to buy the house? There's a lot of self-doubt that starts to creep in Meanwhile, if you just told the person like, hey, I'm a private investor, I know enough, but I haven't been doing this for like 10 years like many other companies, but I'm willing to work with you. It goes a longer way.
Right.
But yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. So, you got started in this thing. You did a little bit of role play and everything. How long from starting the mentorship did you find your first deal, and what was the situation behind that deal?
That's such a good question, and it's so interesting because I got my first deal about 3.5 months into joining the mentorship, and I told myself I'm not going to spend any more money. I'm done spending money. I'm done doing all that stuff. So what I did is I JV'd. I joint ventured with other people who were, getting phone numbers, getting lists, getting addresses. So in this example, there was a gentleman. I let's rewind that a little bit. The way I found people to JV with is I went to a lot of the Zooms, I went to a lot of the trainings, and I consume a lot of information. And I would answer people's questions in the private Facebook page. So I would be in these Facebook groups and I would answer questions. People would ask questions and I would answer questions. And there's a common misconception that the people who are asking for help can't help you. Conception. If someone's asking for help, like they can't help you. I was like, look, I don't know how I can help people, but if I know the answer to that question, I'm going to do my best to answer it. And I did that religiously. I remember this guy, he had a question about mobile homes and something like that. I remember I just read up on mobile homes, so I answered his question. And then he called me. He's like, can we get on the phone? I got on the phone with him. I helped him out. Cool. 2 weeks later, he had another question about like HELOCs, home equity line of credits. And I knew the answer to that question. And I answered it. And he's like, can I get on the phone to ask you real quick? So I got on the phone. I help him. And he's like, hey, man, like, you really helped me out. What can I do for you? And I'm like, oh, no, don't worry about it. And he's like, well, what are you doing right now in your business? I'm like, well, I'm calling people sellers. I've been practicing role playing so I can talk to sellers. And he goes, it's funny. I've got 84 sellers that I need to talk to. I just haven't had time. Why don't we call them together? And if we get a deal, we split the deal. And I'm like, I was like, that's perfect. Let's do it. So we JV on these 84 sellers. We're like, okay, we'll go through the list. Anything we get out of this, we'll split it evenly and we'll start. And so we talk to each other every day. We went through the list and I really had a hard time. I was like really one of the first times where I was really talking to a lot of sellers. I was nervous. I was biting my fingernails. I was going through it. I had a hard time negotiating and I actually didn't get a single deal from it. But he did. He actually was able to get a seller and get a price and send a contract. And celebrating, we were happy, and we're like, where's the property? It's in South Carolina. Do you live in South Carolina? No, I live in New York. Do you live in South Carolina? No, I live in Virginia. All right, so what do we do? I was able to find somebody because I was networking who lived 15 minutes from the property. I asked her if she'd take photos for us. She did. And she said, do you guys have a buyer? We said, no. She said, I might know a couple guys that might be interested. We said, if you bring us a buyer, we'll split it 3 ways.
Right.
We did. We found a buyer who paid us $12,000. We split it 3 ways. I got $4,000. That was my first deal I've ever done. I never talked to the seller. I just happened to put myself in the right group.
No, I love that. I love that because this is a good segue. I've kind of kept this on the low, but for people following me, I'm creating a program called like the Strategic Partners Program. And the overall concept of the program is basically just covering, because I got it basically similar like you. The whole idea of the strategic partner process is just being good at a particular skill and being able to leverage it into as many opportunities, whether investments, whether partnerships or whatever, but just focusing on the one thing that you're good at instead of trying to, because everybody has this idea or mentality that you either have to know everything or you have to know the entire process of investing or you have to have a huge amount of money. But really, when it boils down to it, you really just have to know one piece of the whole puzzle, and you can insert yourself into as many deals as possible. When I got started in real estate, for me, I was good at running comps. I don't know why, but I never really loved math or anything, but I saw running comps more of like an art. And I was really
Yeah.
able to like see, okay, this is what this other buyer bought, and this is what the property looked like. This is what ours looked like. And, from just putting myself out in the field and trying many things, I was like, okay, we can probably do this rehab for X amount of dollars. And it allowed me to start JVing with people like, hey, maybe you should price it this way. I think I know a buyer this way. And it helps you get started faster than people that try to do the acquisitions, the dispositions. You want to go view the property in person just so you keep a whole chunk. What ends up happening is you just delay your starting time. Versus, like you guys said, you guys took one deal that he could have decided to keep it for himself, but then he wouldn't have had somebody that could, he wouldn't have had your network to find somebody to go view the property. And if you guys didn't find that lady who could view the property, you wouldn't have found a buyer. So I just love that you gave that example because, it just covers what exactly strategic partnership is about.
Put it this way. If he had to call all 84, would he have even made it down the list? Because I was calling half and he was calling half. So now he didn't have 84 to call. He had a 40 to call. And he was like, that's way more reasonable. And we called together and we held each other accountable for, I think, like 6 weeks. So
wow.
Who knows? Like he had those 84 in his system, in his pipeline for weeks and weeks, and he didn't even start. Right. So
that's exactly what I'm about to say. Even more importantly, him finding you helped him even get started, deciding like, you know what, I'm going to even call this list that I've been sitting on. That's really cool. So you got your first lead, 4,000. Nothing compared to the 50,000+ that you've already spent into the mentorship. Before we even go a bit further, what kept you going? I mean, I understand now you're in the sub 2 group because you say you're already like 3 months in and you hadn't found a deal. What kept you still going within the sub? What stood out for you in the sub 2 mentorship that kept you going? Like, you know what? Let me just keep going. 3 months in, I'm going to keep going. I'll keep providing value. I'll keep networking. I'll keep trying my best. What really kept you going?
It was, I believed it. I believed it was possible. I never gave up on being a business owner and having my own business. And I always wanted to be in real estate. I loved real estate. I loved creative finance. The other groups I was part of, they had some classes on creative finance, and I love them. I just wanted to be in the field doing it. And I remember joining Sub 2 and seeing Pace Morby talk to sellers, and the way Pace talks to sellers is so natural. It's such a flow conversation. I loved it. I was like, that's how I want to talk to sellers. And so I'm listening to Pace's conversations like on loop all day and all night. I would just listen to his seller calls until I felt like I grasped the spirit of it. And I really believed it, man. I believe that if I really tried my best, if I was engaged and committed, something good would happen. And it did. Like that first deal was awesome. And then that led to a second deal where we made $14,000. I actually took that $4,000, started a small company with a few people. We called some sellers. We made $14,000. Now we had like $17,000, $18,000 in the pipeline. And I spent all of it. My first company I made went bankrupt. We lost all that money. How to effectively spend money on generating leads. So I hired virtual assistants. I pulled lists and it just wasn't working. And I didn't know that, when you pull a list, your filters have to be so fine-tuned. And if your filters aren't fine-tuned, your guys are just calling nonstop. And also, the dialers were not properly working, meaning they were getting a lot of disconnections. I wasn't rotating a phone numbers, so a lot of the phone numbers are showing up as spam. Yeah. I did not know all these things, so we spent so much money. And I'm like, let's just get a lot of leads and just dump that money. I spent that like 18 grand in 3 months. We ran out of money, and we were like, barely any leads, not really any motivated leads. And we ran out. And I didn't give up. I started another company, and I got a partner, to your point, who specializes in list pulling, in training instance in data, and he's like fine tuning. He's like, we're gonna pull this list of this many records. He looks at the data. He goes, this list is like getting this good response. He's rotating numbers every 3 days. He's rotating phone numbers. He knows all this stuff. He's been doing this stuff for 3-4 years. So now he's my partner in my wholesaling business, and now we're getting amazing leads. And now my job is to train our salespeople
to close the leads. That's just perfect, man. I didn't even plan on speaking on. I'm so happy about this so far because, I never even planned on speaking about the strategic partner program or anything like that. But you're just so much like honing in on why it's important for people to strategically partner up. In sub 2, we call it squatting up. It's just the whole, and if for those of you that don't know the sub 2 community, that's one of the main reasons why everybody that you see in the sub 2 community absolutely loves the community. It's a sense of just the togetherness. It's knowing that you're in a place with people that have the same mindset as you, the people that are thinking the same way about business as you are, and that are willing to go above and beyond and provide value with integrity. Because it's one thing to provide value with a means to an end. It's another thing to just provide value with integrity just to see that other person win. And to touch on that, like I'll even give you my after joining the sub 2 mentorship, like a couple weeks later, met a guy, brought me a deal. I went to go see it. The first deal, it was an absolute mess. The sewer is backing up. It was supposed to be a creative deal sub 2. So I was happy, like, wow, I'm only in this mentorship like 2 weeks and I'm coming across my first sub 2. I was like happy about it. I went to go see it. The sewer was backing up. The foundation was wrong. So luckily I took an inspector with me and he was just like, man, just stay away. This is a whole mess. And later on, I found out that the guy was in the sub 2 group. So I was like, hey, man, this is what my inspector told me, just personally letting you know so that you don't waste your time trying to push this deal for this price when it's an absolute no deal. And then the next week or so, he brought me a Novation deal. And on that deal, I did that deal, first of all, with no money out of pocket, which reinforces his strategic partner. I found a lender that was willing to finance the rehab.
Let's break this deal down. Hold on. Let's break this deal down because there's a lot of jargon in this, and I really want your viewers to understand because this is really cool what you did. You're able to. I understand the jargon, and wrong here. So, this guy brought you a deal. Was the deal? Same guy brings you another deal in a couple weeks.
Yep.
And this second deal is where the seller will sell you their home.
Yep.
But will wait paid until you fix it up.
Yep.
And then you lay on the open market. And then the buyer will come in with the money. And then from the money the buyer comes in with, it pays the seller off, and then it pays you the difference.
Exactly. So that's an Novation in a nutshell for anybody that doesn't understand. It's a way for you to, I believe that's every flipper's dream. This market is weird, but if you guys can find Novation, there is money to be made because you're saving on so many fees. Because when I went to the property, we weren't actually even thinking of a Novation. The seller just really wanted $60,000. And I mean, the seller wanted 68 because they wanted to pay off their mortgage. It was their second house. They were trying to do the rehab, but they were just done with it. And I was like, hey, man, the most I can pay from the comps I'm seeing right now is 60,000. I'm just new to flips and I like to run my numbers very conservative, going back to just being comfortably speaking with the seller. I just let them know, hey, I'm not this huge company. I haven't been doing this for years. So I'm very, very, very conservative when I'm running my numbers. It just can't work at 68. It might just be an extra 8,000 to you. But to me, it could make a difference between whether I make money or not. Right. So I told him, and immediately he whispered in my ear, was like, do you think they'll agree on Novation? I'm like, I mean, I've only heard Pace talk about it like once, but I could try and talk to them. And then we spoke to the sellers. They were a little bit, antsy. The wife wasn't sure. She didn't know. I was like, hey, to make it even better, I'll make you feel like you've sold the property. I'll pay your mortgage, pay the utilities, pay anything that you need to be paying on the house during this entire process. So it just feels like a long escrow. It just feels like our escrow is taking longer than normal, but you won't have any responsibilities towards the house. They're like, hey, that's fine. Got in, did the whole deal. I think based off of my cash on cash, I was like an 80% cash on cash based off of how much I put into the property and how much I made back.
Again, so first of all, 80% cash on cash is a dream come true. That's a unicorn deal. First of all,
Unicorn.
You're doubling your money. You're close to doubling your
Pretty
money.
much.
But let's break it down. So there was a seller and a husband and wife, and they're like, "Look, Femi, we will sell you our house for $68,000."
Yep.
And you ran numbers, and you're like, $68,000. I'm going to write you a check for $68,000. It's a little too much. I'll do 60. And they didn't want 60. So what you said, look, I'll give you the 68, but don't sell it to me. We're going to get under contract that I get to fix it up and I get to list it in the open market for whatever price I decide. Doesn't matter. None of your business. I get to sell it on the open market. And once it sells, on the market, you'll get 68,000. And they liked it. They're like, well, I get more money that way. I just got to wait for my money.
Yep. And that was just really important because it wasn't a thing about speed. And it goes down to, what we talk about, it's identifying the main reason or the main motivation of the seller. Their motivation wasn't exactly like speed. They just wanted a certain price and they wanted convenience, knowing that the property will be taken. They don't have to deal with so many parties. They don't want to talk to too many people. They were so antsy about the whole situation because they didn't want the house to go into foreclosure. So it was just identifying that, like, okay, you know what? Price is the main thing for these people. So even if I keep repeating, I'll close in 30 days, I'll close in 20 days, that didn't matter to them. They didn't care about any of that. So I figured that out and I'm like, okay, you know what? You guys are not in a hurry. Like Munif just said, let me go in, fix this. I'm even looking for somewhere to put my guys to work. So I'll get them in there, let them fix this up. We'll list it. And once we list it, everybody gets paid. I'll make sure you get paid first. Your mortgage is cleared off and taken care of. And then whatever else flows back to me, if that is okay.
So how much did the renovations cost you for that project?
So the renovations at first, I was estimating a quick 12,000, but that rapidly increased to like 28,000 with everything I had to do into it. So that went for me, first of all, I rose only like 10,000. I was like, okay, whatever else, the difference, I'll put in the money. But we saw, I started seeing from like week 2, like, 10,000 is not going to be enough. It's not going to cut it. Raise another extra 18,000 in the middle of the project.
Tell us a little bit about that. So you didn't use your own money to do the renovations?
Zero of my money, not even the earnest money deposit. Even the wholesalers that sold me the deal, I told them, hey, you guys have to wait till everybody else is getting paid. You're getting paid on the back end. And surprisingly, it worked. At first I told them, to sweeten up the deal, I'll pay you, because the guy was like, hey, man, whatever, being part of the community, he was like, you know what, I just want to make sure this deal gets closed. Whatever you can pay us as a marketing fee, we just want to recoup our marketing fee. I was like, hey, that sounds great, but I don't like being greedy. You brought me a really great deal from what it seems like. I'll give you 4,000 for sure. I want to make back at least 16,000 at the time because I thought the house was only going to sell for 120 something and I was only going to spend 15K. So I was like, hey, once I make 16,000, whatever else over the top, we split 50-50.
That's really good.
Yeah, I was like, there's enough money on this. Let's split the money. You brought me a great deal. You guys could have very well did this deal or sold it to somebody else, but you brought it to me. So you deserve to eat from the back end too. They agreed to that, got in, started doing the work, and the cost started going up. And it was just a conversation. I got back to them. I was like, hey, I can't come up with an extra 8,000 out of nowhere. And just with conversation again, I just decided, you know what, let me let the realtor know what's it. Because at first we were thinking, oh, should we hide this and just try and sneak it out? But I was like, you know what, there's no point. I don't want to put her in an uncomfortable situation with her buyers, explaining to them why they started leaking 2 days after they bought the property. And we spoke to them. Luckily, the buyer was a contractor himself. And he said, you know what? I know about this problem. Don't put it on the disclosure. I'll take care of it. Just credit me back $6,000 when we close, which I will put that into repairing the basement. So that's how we made that deal work. Sold it to them for $145. Made back. It was crazy. We sold it for $120. I was only thinking I was going to sell it for $120. So imagine a deal. $68 to the seller, $28 in repairs, all my realtor fees and closing costs and everything, roughly about 12-ish thousand and some change, and the rest was mine. Like,